But then also most importantly, when I went through my early 20s and went through those questions of who am I and who do I want to be, I think I found a decent method of finding out those things, or at least beginning the process of finding out those things. And ultimately, I turned that into a talk or a speech, I guess you can say, that
Mhm.
I did at my work at the time. And the response was great, and it made me think, hey, if the 200 people in this room loved it, then maybe there's other people on this planet that will love it as well. So let me see if there's a way I can get it out to the world. And 7 years later, I turned it into a book. So I took my sweet time, but
Love it.
eventually got there.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our mission is simple. It's to help you live your best audacious life ever. I'm your host, Audley Stephenson. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, and I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us as we embark on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and growth. Each episode is crafted to inspire you to break free from limitations and embrace the audacity within you. Now, think of self-exploration as a treasure hunt. Each question you ask yourself is like a map that leads you deeper into the forest of your own identity. At times, the path to may be overgrown and difficult to navigate, but with each question, much like with each step, you uncover hidden gems of insight about who you are and what you truly want. Today's interview with Roberto Maiolo highlights how this journey can lead to profound personal growth and understanding. Joining us today, Roberto is a passionate author and a lifelong questioner based in Toronto, Canada, my home. And he's here to share his insights with a background in marketing and a keen interest in self-discovery. Roberto has spent years exploring the complexities of identity and purpose. His journey led him to write a book that encapsulates the principles he's developed along the way, aiming to help others find clarity and authenticity in their own lives. Roberto's insights are incredibly relevant to our discussion today as he embodies the essence of questioning oneself and the transformative power that comes with it. His experiences and knowledge will guide us through the intricacies of self-discovery and how we can all embark on our personal journey. So we're all set, excited to jump into our conversation with Roberto. Let's go. Hey, Robert, thank you for joining me here on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate making the time with this, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be on.
Well, it's great to be able to, and I'm a big fan of being able to engage in discussions that can help me meet people, make a difference in their lives. You also believe very much in helping people make a difference in people's lives through the process of self-discovery and learning about themselves and who they are and really getting to the authentic core. You wrote a book, so we'll talk about that as well. But maybe as a starting point, I get you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us about the work that you've done to get you to the point that you're at now.
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for having me. My name's Robert Maiolo. I live here in Toronto with my wife. Um, yeah, about an 18-month author. So not super new, but not
Okay.
super old either. I work in the city, kind of like in a marketing gig, lived in Toronto my whole life, and like to think I've been a lifelong questioner and someone who thinks about things a lot, maybe more than others. And it kind of is what kickstarted my self-discovery journey and led to me being a little bit more inquisitive, and what ultimately led to me coming up with some of the principles I talk about in the book.
Awesome. And where did you sort of develop this passion or interest in helping people figure themselves out?
I think it was I don't know. I think it was when I worked on some things for myself and went like I had I've had a good life, but had some not so great things happen to me, like I think kind of like everyone, um, and needed to find a way to get through it and to, you know, come out on the other side. But then also most importantly, when I went through my early 20s and went through those questions of who am I and who do I want to be, I think I found a decent method of finding out those things, or at least beginning the process of finding out those things. And ultimately, I turned that into a talk or a speech, I guess you can say, that
Mhm.
I did at my work at the time. And the response was great, and it made me think, hey, if the 200 people in this room loved it, then maybe there's other people on this planet that will love it as well. So let me see if there's a way I can get it out to the world. And 7 years later, I turned it into a book. So I took my sweet time, but
Love it.
eventually got there.
You mentioned uh, uh, so everyone's having, we all have sort of challenge that we go through life, right? And they impact us. But for some, the impact is greater than others. And I get it. We're not all the exact same. So we're not going to experience things the same way. We're going to respond differently. Absolutely. There's no question about that. Um, why do you think for some, it's harder to get past these obstacles than others?
Well, I think there's also, I mean, there's a few reasons I think.
Hmm.
One of which is the vastly varying degrees of challenges that people face in their lives.
Hmm.
Some people have pretty sweet lives. Some people don't. People have challenges, but it's not anything overly traumatic or anything insanely difficult to get over.
Yep.
And some people have very difficult challenges in their lives, and sometimes they just decide to go through it by themselves and try and process these things by themselves, and that takes longer as well. One of the things I learned is that and I'm better at it some days than other, but like asking for help can sometimes, be a very helpful way of getting through things. So
Yep.
I think it's a couple reasons. The main ones I would say is like the varying degrees, and then also some people just don't have the tools and the support and the people around them to get
Mm,
through it. Um, yeah, some people get stuck for a very long time, and it's not fun. And I've been there for sure.
got you. Got you. Um, so for those who are stuck, what's the process of getting unstuck? What's that look like?
So I don't know what the process is, but here's what worked for me, and this is
Okay.
kind of what I went through. So like I said before, like most people in their early 20s, kind of stumbling through life and trying to figure out, you know, why I'm here and, why, what's my purpose and what is it that I would like to do. And I think the trap I fell into early, and I think a lot of people fall into this trap, is just listening to other people and
Mhm.
and following other people's answers. So if I wanted to, um, you know, find out my career, I'd be like, what does that guy do? He makes a lot of money. Maybe I'll do what he does. He's a real estate agent. Okay, I'll go
Right.
be a real estate agent. You know what I mean?
Right.
That guy looks happy. What does he do? He plays pickleball every day. Okay, I'll go play pickleball. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll be happy. Um, and I think sometimes, copying other people can work for in some respects, but certainly it didn't work for me. I didn't really get any traction. I read a lot of books and listened to a lot of pods and uh, tried to just mimic other people, and it didn't work.
Right.
Somewhere along the line, I just sat down and said, "What? Who am I? Who am I?"
Great question.
And asking yourself who you are is a very difficult question, and it takes a long time. But then through that, I figured out, well, maybe there's smaller, easier questions I could ask myself that will help me with the who am I question.
Right.
So, okay, who am I is difficult to answer, but what do I care about? Who do I care about? It's easier to answer. What do I want people to know about me? What do I offer to this world? What have I been through that maybe not other people have been through, or not many other people have been through?
Right.
And through this process of asking myself questions, and more importantly, asking myself smaller, easier to digest questions rather than who am I and why am I here,
Mm.
I think I slowly made steps to finding out some answers to myself and to my life. And I think, you know, my theory that I'm running with is that a lot of people have answers to their questions in lives.
Right.
They just don't really ask themselves that many questions, or just assume that the answers they have must be wrong. So I'll just go take someone else's.
Yeah, no, it's that comparison thing can be a tough one, and uh even damaging to us if we let it get too far, right? Like
Hmm.
the idea that seems to be lost on people is that my journey is my journey and your journey is yours.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to experience and what you're going to experience aren't necessarily going to be the same. There might be some similarities, right? And and so a certain degree, copying what someone does isn't always a bad thing, but there needs to be an understanding of who you are and what works for you. And so I think that's an important process to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then also not cherry picking people's lives. So, okay, you see someone who's, 6'2", 220, shredded. I want to be like them, but I don't want to wake up at 5 in the morning and run. And I still want to eat Oreos. I still want to go to a couple weeks I'm going to the Detroit Lions games. I want to drink beers and have hot dogs and you know what I mean? Well, no,
Yeah.
like you can't take the great parts of some people's lives and ignore the bad parts. Like
Yeah.
life is it's a restaurant, not a buffet. You can't cherry pick. You order something and you're all in. So I think that's sometimes where people get caught. Not only do they compare, they cherry pick, which is even worse.
Yes. 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 The interesting thing about that, I think that's a really good point. The interesting thing about that is when you look at someone's life, we're not always seeing the full story, right?
Yeah.
So we might think they're happy, but maybe.
No, you might have knocked out your microphone.
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Yeah, so as I was saying, we might think, um, we might think that this person's living this wonderful life, but we don't know all that's gone on in the backstory. We don't have that full vantage point of what they've gone through. There, they might get up super early in the morning to practice to get better at something, and like I said, we want to still sleep in, for example. So it's really
Mhm.
important just to understand that the story we're seeing may not necessarily be the entire story. And so to jump into something when we don't have all the details, it potentially could be problematic for us.
Hmm. Absolutely. Your mic's plugged in, but I think your audio input is still your computer because it sounds echoey. But yeah, this idea of like of I just want the good parts, and I don't know people. If you don't understand someone's backstory, then you don't understand like maybe the work that would go into it,
Yep.
in order to emulate that. So, for example, when I was in my early 20s and I would try and emulate people who were successful, well, I would only see snippets of them. Maybe I would see a successful relative at a party
Right.
once a year, or I see a guy on TV, but it's a 20-minute interview. So sure, I can take a couple tips, but I'm not able to fully replicate their lives and see the work they're going through and be able to emulate that. And I think, one of the not a crazy fan of, like YouTube and stuff like that, but one of the things that comes out of it is like some people do these like day-long logs. So you can see, a lot of NFL players are really getting into that where they'll do a blog of like, I'm up at 4 a.m., breakfast, gym, home,
Yeah.
uh, practice, study. So you can kind of see like, oh, it's not just show up Sunday at 1 p.m. and shoot the lights out. It's like
Right.
there's a lot that goes into
There's
it.
a process.
Um,
Yeah, you're right.
it's
You're
a
right.
process, but you don't get to see that for everyone.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so that's why. So I would caution people on that. But yeah, I mean, the idea of looking and watching what other people are doing, you can learn. So I don't think we're saying absolutely ignore what people are doing because I think there's things that you can learn, but you also, was the expression, take it with a grain of salt, right? And understand that we're getting a snippet of the big, big picture. And so I think that's important to understand. You describe yourself as a questioner, right? Um, why is it important to ask questions? Like why are they significant?
I think questions in a sense can expand your consciousness and it kind of opens your mental map and makes you think about things that you wouldn't otherwise think about. Um, I think there's a lot of benefits to questions. It helps you figure out kind of who you are. Some of the things I talk about, who are you? Who do you want to be? How are you going to get there? It helps you kind of figure out like important things in your life. Um, in a non-selfish way, I think questions makes you a better friend, partner, conversationist. If you think about someone that you enjoy hanging out with, they're usually a pretty good questioner. They don't just sit and talk about themselves for 3 hours.
Mm.
They ask you questions that are deep and meaningful and well thought of. Um, so I think it not only helps you selfishly figure out what's going on, but I think it also makes you a better communicator and it makes you someone that people want to be around, which I think is very important. So there's a lot of benefits to not only yourself, but the people around you.
Got you, got you. And I think questioning really works hand in hand nicely with that process of self-discovery, right? Like it, if you're able to question again, who am I? What do I like? And it allows you to be able to explore.
Yeah.
Would you say? I guess I think your answer. Don't ask anyways. Do you? Would you say in that process of self-discovery, it starts with questions?
I think it starts with questions, but I also think it starts with the the understanding and the willingness to have kind of a growth mindset.
Hmm.
And, you know, asking questions for the sake of questions, I think is fun if you're a philosopher or something like that. But if you're trying to improve yourself, I think you have to go into it with the mindset of, okay, I'm asking myself these questions because I want to grow and I want to make a change. Like don't get the book twisted. It's full of questions, but it's very much an action-oriented book. It's you want to be able to take these discoveries you make about yourself and do something with them. So a growth mindset and an action-oriented mindset, I think, is the first thing you need to have. And then you can get into the process of asking yourself questions and then taking action. And also, and people aren't going to like this, but like if you ask yourself questions, you might not be crazy about what the answers are.
That's a big one. Robert, that is a big one. Like,
Yeah,
you have to be prepared for whatever the
yeah,
answer is.
yeah, yeah. I didn't love the answers to who am I? I didn't love all of them. I still don't love all of them. And if you ask yourself the question, who do I want to be? Maybe the answer doesn't sound so fun or sexy. But that's okay because you need to figure out what these things are if you're going to make changes to them. Can't when you put something in Google Maps, it asks you two questions. Where are you? Where do you want to go? You need to figure out those things before you can take action. And it's okay if the answers aren't great today. That's why we're finding them out.
I think it's really fascinating because oftentimes what we talk about these questions, um, we have the answers. We
Yeah,
really do.
I know.
Um, some might be deeper than others. Maybe there's these answers are rooted in something in our childhood, let's say, and so there's no question that there's some digging. So again, you talk about self-discovery. There's some digging that has to happen, and you might not like what happened. Maybe what happened is related to what happened to you as a child that's been following you, all this trauma that's been following you entire life, for example, right? Like these are
Yeah,
some real. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that when you make the decision to go down this process, you need to be really, really sure this is what you want to do.
yeah. You need to be sure. You need to also be like, the question, who am I, can sometimes seem stagnant and seem like, oh, this is who I am forever. But you also have to realize that the answer to the question, who am I, was different 3 years ago. It's
Mm.
going to be different 2 years from now. It might even be different 2 months from now. And also the question, who do I want to be, is has changed 1,000 times in my life. So this you have to have this fluidity and lack of rigidity to to fully be able to make these changes in your life and not be so stubborn and be willing to understand that things are going to change depending who you are. One of my favorite quotes, as the facts change, I change my mind. When the facts in your life change, then you can kind of make changes as to some of these questions and some of the principles in your life.
Love it. I love it. I think it really makes you honest, right? Right, Robert?
Yeah.
Like, and when you're going through this process, and I do also appreciate just acknowledging that that we're going to evolve ourselves. and we're not going to exactly stay who we are. You know, you can go through an experience, and that experience can change you. It can make you wiser. It can give you insights. It can give you perspective that you never had before, which will naturally sort of evolve who you were.
Yeah.
And so I think the acknowledgement that there can be change is a very, very, very good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be massive. Like I was a different person. I went to Japan for 2 weeks. I was a different person when I came back. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Like you can just the littlest. I went to California for 8 days. I was a different person when I came back. Like it doesn't have to be these crazy, like I got married a few months ago. Obviously I'm a different person after that, but like it doesn't have to be these crazy grandiose things. It could be something as simple as like going for a walk and seeing something interesting. Like these like micro changes that sometimes you notice, sometimes you don't, but it's gonna affect who you are.
Yes. Yeah. Again, and I don't see how it doesn't impact,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's almost impossible not for there to be some sort of evolution, if you will.
mhm,
And in fact, the matter is, change isn't a bad thing, right?
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
just remember that change is a good thing.
yeah. Some people hold on very dearly to like, no, I'm this person. I'm
Mhm.
not, but who you are is gonna change as you go through experiences in life.
Mhm.
So this having this like this stubbornness of like, no, I'm not the person who, sure, it's good to have your principles and your morals and things that you stand for, but like those are gonna change and be different. And they were different when you were 20, and they were different when you were 25 and 30 and 35, and they'll be different when you're 5 years older than you are today. Like,
Got it.
you know,
Got it. Let's talk about the book. Was the goal to always be an author?
no, I don't think the the goal was to be an author. I think I always wanted to write a book, but it came out of a very selfish idea of I wanted something that was going to live longer than me.
Okay.
And that's a very selfish thing, I realize. But I went through this phase in my life where I realized I was going to die, and I'm like, I'm going to die, and all the memories of me are going to die. Um, so I'm like, what can I make that will last forever? And I'm like, well, art lasts forever.
Sure.
I can't draw, I can't sing, can't dance, write half decent. I have no clue what I would write about. So I guess through that, I wanted to be an author. Because I don't think that's a great reason to be an author, but that was what worked for me. Um,
Well, it's
and
an
then yeah, like
honest
it's
answer. To be honest, Robert, it's an honest answer. Let's be real.
yeah,
Like, I got to give you credit
mm,
for that, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
nothing wrong
Thank
with
you.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. Um, so yeah, so then I was at work, and my boss asked me to give a talk to the other people in my department about how they can perform better in their roles. Worked in a strange department. There were 200 people on the same floor that all had the same job. And I had been there, I guess, longer than most of them. So we had this kind of town hall thing. I got on stage, and I said, "Listen, I was told to come up here and tell you how to be better at your jobs, but I don't really know how to do that." And I said, "Here's what I do have for you. Here's some questions you can ask yourself that might help you understand why you're here. It
Okay.
might help motivate you to be better at the things you're doing while you're here, while also helping you realize who you might want to be when you get out of this department one day in the future." And I went through the four questions, the four main questions that are in the book. Who am I? Who do I want to be? How am I going to get there? How am I going to stay on track? So if you think of a map, who am I? Who do I want to be? How am I going to get there? And how do I stay on track? Um, and after the talk, a lot of people came up to me and said that that was awesome and very like inspiring, and they learned a lot. And they said that a lot of people said that that should be a book, and that was 8 years ago, and I wrote the book a year ago, so it took me 7 years to ferment. That's another thing about self-discovery. It doesn't
Yeah,
happen overnight. Like
that's right.
things slowly ferment in the back of your brain. And then finally, I just sat down one day and said, I really need to write this book. Um, and thankful, the good thing is when it takes you that long to write a book, when you actually sit down to write, things have been fermenting so long in your head that you're able to just get it out. It's not like I wasn't sitting at the computer like, what should I say? I would sit down at the computer and type as fast as I possibly could because I had so many things coming to me that it only took me, I don't know, maybe 4 months or something like that and I had a full-time job and still do. Like it was just like at nights, writing. Um, but because I had spent so much time thinking about them, I was able to get it on paper
Sure.
and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how the book came about. Yeah.
And listen, the thought process, I love the fact that it took you as long as it did, right? Like because that was
Yeah.
because you'll hear people say, hey, I went away in the weekend and wrote a book and I got this bestseller kind of thing. And
Mm.
but and that's just people's process. Everyone's different. We're not all
Hmm.
the same. We do things
Yeah,
at different levels, different paces, different speeds. And
of
so
course.
if it took you 7 years, it took you 7 years.
Hmm.
That's just what it was, right? And so I think I actually have a significant amount of respect for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I saw an interview uh with George R. R. Martin and another author. George R. R. Martin is the guy who wrote the Game of Thrones books.
Okay.
And he goes, in the time it took him to write one chapter, the guy he was interviewing wrote 6 books in the same amount of time. So I'm like, well, if it takes George that long, then I don't feel so bad because he's a very good author. So I felt a little bit better.
That's right. That's right. And again, and see that's the whole thing. It'll circle back to that comparison thing and why that's so critical that we don't compare,
Hmm.
right? Because
Hmm.
we all are all very, very different.
Yeah.
Um, how did you know when you got to the end of that book writing process? How did you know you were there?
I was just sick of it, to be honest. I was just so when I was writing a book, I would like go on Reddit and like I would listen to interviews with artists, so whether it be authors or musicians or stuff
Yeah.
like that. And a lot of what I would hear is like it's never done. They just take it away from you. So like eventually the publishing house or the record label was like, okay, just give us the album. That's enough. But I didn't find that to be true for me. I was like, when I was done, I was like, just get this thing away from me. And like, I didn't do a podcast probably until a year after it came out because I was
Yeah.
just like, it was like so. It's like, the book is about the principles, but also I write about myself too, about how
Yeah.
I went through the book or how I went through the process. And in the book, I give stories about my life. So it's just like so personal, and then it's so painful to write a book, especially
Sure.
when you have an editor and like you just like pour out these stories about your life
Yes.
and the
Yes.
editor goes, not that good. I mean, you might want to change that. You want to change that. So like I'm just so
But it's
sick
my
of
life. It's me.
no, yeah, yeah. These like harrowing stories that like I've told maybe 6 people in my life and I'm
Yes.
putting it on paper. And
Yes.
then you have an editor we barely even know goes like, I don't know, not great. So yeah, just by the time you go through that process, you're like, I think I'm done with this. Let's get it out of here. Yeah.
Done. Yeah. Yeah. Give us the book title there, just so our listeners are aware.
Yeah, I have it here. The book with no answers, Unlocking the Power of Questions for a Better Life. It's on Audible or it's on Amazon paper, Amazon Kindle, and then Audible, and I'm the one that reads it. So hopefully you like my voice because it's me for 3 hours reading the book.
Nice. Nice, nice. The uh, uh, the whole idea of having a better life. I mean, if I bring it back to this podcast, we're encouraging individuals to live that best, audacious life. And if it's the need to ask the right questions for us to get there, then that absolutely is the pathway to do so. It's funny. I was thinking that so the final question I wanted to ask you is say, so if someone wanted, if you were to tell someone, they need to pick up your book, why that is, right? And actually, maybe I will ask that question. If there's someone out there listening and they're feeling stuck or they're feeling uncertain of themselves, they're not sure if this is a book for them, what would you tell them?
I would say that the book is just when you read the book, you're in the driver's seat and I'm in the passenger seat. And I'm saying, hey, I think you might want to make a right up there. And hey, I think there's some traffic up there. You might want to go around this way. But you're in the driver's seat. You're in control. A lot of self-help books put you in the passenger seat. And they
Mm,
go, we should do this. We should do that. Let's go here. Let's go here. Let's go make a left, make a right. And I think the reason that's important is because that gives people a level of comfort of like, hey, I'm in control here.
yes.
And these are questions I'm going to ask myself. and I'm going to find my own answers, and I'm going to go through the book at my own pace. As you can see, it's a thin book, but it can take people a long time to read it because you kind of read a little bit, and you think about it, you put it down, and
Yep.
then a few days later you pick it up again. So I think the book is a very like comforting and easy to follow, and it doesn't ask too much of you. It more just like asks you to take control, to like it doesn't tell you to wake up at 4 a.m. the next morning. It doesn't tell you to stop eating egg yolks. Like it just tells you to just like hang out by yourself, grab your favorite drink, ask yourself some questions, and we'll get through this. And this is not going to be quick and it's not going to be easy, but that's okay. And I think if someone finds my book, they've probably read a bunch of other do this, do that
Yeah.
self-help books.
Yeah.
So I think this will be a refreshing, fun, easy to read take on self-help.
I love it. I love it. So you said it's on Amazon. If listeners wanted to connect with you directly, Robert, where can we send them?
Yep, at Robbie Axelrod on Instagram. Then you can send me an email, robmaiolo@gmail.com. Happy to hang out.
Very cool. Very cool. Listen, I thank you for doing this. This has been awesome. Congrats on the book. Being first-time author I think it's a big deal because for in your case, it's a 7-year journey, and so it's kind of nice to have that culmination at the end of it. Going, here it is, right? And so, congrats on that. Thank you for being a guest here on the Audacious Living Podcast. All the best, my friend, and take care.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Back we are here on the podcast, our chat with Roberto. He shared a powerful perspective. The process of self-discovery is not just about asking the big questions like, who am I? But also breaking those down into smaller, more digestible inquiries. This approach allows us to uncover our values, our passions, and the unique contributions we can make to the world. He emphasized that many people already possess the answers they seek. They just need the courage to ask the right questions. It's a journey filled with challenges, yet it holds the potential for immense growth and fulfillment. I'd encourage you to connect with Roberto directly. You'll find his contact details in the show notes below where you can explore more of his work and insights. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Audacious Living Podcast. Oh yeah, please also be sure to check out his book on self-discovery because that extends this conversation, provides more insights, and really hope that you found inspiration in our conversation today. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider following, subscribing, and sharing if you haven't already done so, because that's how we grow this community of audacious individuals. Until next time, stay bold and keep exploring. Stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.